Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marble Snap Zone. And today we're taking our weekly look that is everything you could possibly want to know about the new card releasing and the other cards in the Spotlight cache. This week, that means Lady Deathstrike, MODOK, and Stature. I'm going to tell you right now that I don't think Lady Deathstrike is that great, but there are at least two very interesting decks to show you for them, and I'm really excited to talk about MODOK on Stature because I think they are two of the more interesting cards in the game right now. Let's get started, but first, I'd like to explain to you why I think you should subscribe. What we do on this channel is we try and bring you at least two new decks every weekday. These decks are all proven. They have either shown a consistent high win rate, hit infinity, got infinity tickets or borders depending on the time of the month. They are consistently top tier decks. I also get them to you very fast before the meta is aware of them. Before most common Marvel Snap players will know what these decks are, you get to play them, which means you are more effective at snapping, at winning with the deck. This means that you get more infinity tickets, more infinites. You become better at snap. You win more because you have decks that others don't, and you can take advantage of others' lack of knowledge. Subscribing, commenting, hitting that notification bell helps us out. It helps us um, grow. It helps our reach. It helps us find new decks. It helps everything that we're doing here. And we really appreciate the help with the YouTube algorithm, which can often be, let's be honest, quite difficult. It's totally free to support us. If you're willing to, we'd really, really appreciate it. We do one other thing on the channel. We actually do the biggest giveaway in Snap, but we're so far away from that. That won't be till the end of the month. We're only in week 2 of this month. We do the biggest giveaway in Snap every month. But the other thing we're doing is I am a writer for Marvel Snap Zone, and I do the podcast for Marvel Snap Zone. I'm in the content creator program. I cast Snap Battle Arena tournaments. I know almost all of the top tier and competitive players in the community. I went and collected a list of the list is at like 60 things right now. Tips, pro tips from the Snap community. Every other day, I'm releasing a short. I'm releasing a short every day, just like I'm releasing a video every day. But I'm releasing every other day a short that is specifically a Marvel Snap pro tip. These are things that you can take into your gameplay, into your thinking and strategizing about Snap that will make you better players. Again, we're all about helping you to become the best version of a Snap player you can be on this channel. So please, again, if that's something that's interesting to you, if that's something you find value in, hit that sub button, hit that like button, please. Our card is a Lady Deathstrike. Lady Deathstrike is a 5/3. It's a Series 5 card, which means 6,000 tokens. And that is disappointing. Every card this month is 6,000 tokens. The past 2 months, there have been 3,000 token cards. Both months, the best card of the month turned out to be one of those 3,000 token cards. That is Spider-Ham and Legion. The best card of each month of the past 2 months only cost 3,000 tokens. Now we have 6,000 token cards, and let's see if any of them have the value that Spider-Ham and Legion did, or the effect that those cards did on the metagame. Lady Deathstrike's ability is on reveal, destroy each card here with less power than this. So anything with 2 or fewer power, 2 or less power? I'm an English teacher. I feel like that's the kind of thing I should know. Anything with less than 3 power gets destroyed by Lady Deathstrike. That means you can kill your own hoods on your side of the board, for example, and you can kill your opponent's Zaboos on their side of the board. Thinking of a high value proposition for each. That seems great, right? And if you put her in a deck, you're going to be building to situations where she is most effective. Where this is something that not only is it something you want to do, but it's something that doing wins you games. That's more difficult than you would think, though. There's honestly not all that many ways to do it. And that she goes off on turn 5, that she's a 5-cost card, and she has to be a 5-cost card because Zaboo is a 4-cost card, affects 4-cost cards. But that she's a 5-cost card means that a lot of these early power plays opponents are getting benefit throughout the game from them, and when you remove them, you're not affecting the game in the same way you would really like. Before we talk more about the card strategy, let's take a look at the um, cosmetics for the card, the variants that are releasing for the card. I personally am more focused on progression than cosmetics, but I know that when deciding to buy something, cosmetics are something that affect a decent portion of the community. So we're going to take a quick look at all 6 variants for Lady Deathstrike. The first variant for Lady Deathstrike is the Pixel. That's releasing 8/22. I think this is a decent pixel, and people don't like pixels, right? But this is a kind of weird pixel with wavy fingers and way too much cleavage. So, like, I don't know. I think it's a weird enough pixel. When I buy a pixel, I want it to be kind of strange and like out there. I like it to be a weirder card, a weirder situation. I think that makes the pixel more interesting. But like, it's a rare, which means it's 700 gold, not 1200. It's okay, I guess. I don't know. If you like pixels, this is one to grab. The Spotlight Cache, if you have way too many Spotlight Caches or you feel like you must have it, is an Eduardo Mello mech variant. I'll be completely honest, I don't really like this. It doesn't feel at all like Lady Deathstrike to me, and I want my cards to feel like the character. But if you're someone who has to have everything, I'm sure this animates really well. I'm sure it's really cool. I have no interest. Next up, we have an Endenito variant. This is also a rare, releasing the same time as the card. This and the Spotlight are the ones releasing the same time as the card. This one feels more like X23 to me than Lady Deathstrike, except for the hands. So I don't know. Again, like of these three, I think the Pixel is my favorite. Is that crazy to say? That Antonito is good art. It just doesn't feel like the character again to me, who's like almost always a redhead. So I don't know. Here we are. It is another variant for the card. This is thankfully a rare 700 gold as well. We have three more variants. None of these are yet released into the game. We don't know when or how much or anything else. I think all three of these are better than the previous three. We've got the Rian Gonzalez Chibi variant, which is a nice variant if you like chibi art. I tend not to like chibi art, but I do love cats, and there are two nice, cute little kitties in this one. Again, we don't know how much it's going to cost, but this is decent. We've got someone named Doze, absolutely insanely cool variant. I like this one a lot. I think this is a phenomenal card. I think this one looks very cool. I would assume this is expensive. Again, we don't know if it's a bundle. We don't know anything. And lastly, we've got Terry Dodson's. This is comic book art, which is like fine. Again, this doesn't feel super like Deathstrike. This is the coolest art to me. I really like this as art, but it doesn't super duper feel like Deathstrike to me, despite it looking ridiculously cool. Look, none of these are moving me at all. That the last two on this page are at least very cool, but they could be 6 months before they release, right? We don't know if Lady Deathstrike is a Series 3 card by the time these come out. There's no way to know. Our two Spotlight caches should you be considering opening for Lady Deathstrike are this baby MODOK and this very cute Stature, who's on a ball of yarn with a kitty looking at her like she wants to eat her. I don't love the baby MODOK. I don't like baby art very much, although I do like Scotty Young, which is, I know, contradictory. I don't know what to tell you. But Baby MODOK is fine. If you bought MODOK as a season pass card, which I'm assuming is likely the reason you have him, they gave us a variant that month for completing the season pass, and I like that variant better. So, like, I don't see a reason to get this. I don't have a Stature variant, but this Spotlight caches are equivalent to like um something like 2,000 tokens each. Sorry, something along that general vicinity. You don't want to spend 2,000 tokens on this. There is a awesome Den Hip Stature that I don't have. If I open this, I wouldn't be sad, but it's not like a major pull. We'll talk about the quality of the cards and what decks they go in later. This is our little art section, just so you can take a look and that can help you decide. Because maybe you took a look at that Stature and went, oh my god, I must have that. Cool. Now you're opening Spotlight caches, right? All right, now we're back to the actual card itself. The synergies of the card. Forge and Shuri increase the strength of Lady Deathstrike. Increasing the strength of Deathstrike means she's killing bigger things. Killing bigger things is better. If you forge her, she's killing anything with 4 or less power. She becomes a 5 power card, which means she can kill a card like Sarah. We're starting to get up to real value. Now she can kill a Decan if you can get there before the pump. With Shuri, she gets 5 power. She gets up to 6 power, which means she can kill anything with 5 or less. We're on to Silk now. Cards of that stature. We're on to Lizard with that before it gets pulled down. We're on to Rock Slide. There's some real cards if you just Shuri Deathstrike that you can actually take care of. It's also worth noting that Shuri has to be in the same lane, so Deathstrike will kill your Shuri. If you can Wong either of these cards, and you're very likely to need either Magic or Zabu or Psylocke to do so. Then you can go Wong into Shuri or Forge, which obviously increases the viability of things you can kill. We will look at a list that does those things. Anytime a 3-power card is released, we have to take a look at Cerebro 3. This is the other deck we're going to look at. I think Cerebro 3 is fine. Like, I think it's a cool thing to do. I'm not the biggest Cerebro fan in the game. I don't love trying to combo off, but Cerebro 3 is a good deck, and so if you want to play said good deck, this is something you can do. Next up, excuse me. Next up, we have Absorbing Man. So if you play Lady Deathstrike and kill some stuff on turn 4, on turn 5, turn 4, I guess if you're playing a ramp deck, you can then oh, that actually is an extra use that I just occurred to me as I'm doing this video. You can conceivably play Electro to play Lady Deathstrike on turn 4 and get rid of Electro, and then have freedom to play cards. There's probably a destroy package that does that. Oh, Alexa, stop. Apparently Alexa decided that that was a conversation for her. Excuse me. But in general, you can play Lady Deathstrike into an Absorbing Man. Lady Deathstrike will kill whatever in her lane. Absorbing Man will kill anything 4 power or less. It's a perfectly fine play. It's a thing you could end up doing with your Absorbing Man. You really want Zabu, so you can go like Absorbing Man in one lane and Shang in another at that point. But I don't think that's going to be like a meta thing to do or anything super interesting. Dakin is our season pass card, and Dakin, I'm going to say it both ways because it could not possibly matter less. Please breathe. But Dakin, Dokin makes a 1-power card that you can play and then drop Lady Deathstrike on. It's a perfectly fine play line. It's a way to get Dakin to 8 power. Whatever. Is that going to be what you really want to be doing with the card? I wouldn't think so. Maybe if you're running a destroy package anyway, it could be good, right? Like, it's good in a regular destroy deck, but outside of that, meh. The Death Destroy package is a place for her, and I think that Electro build might actually be how to do that and make it good, if that's something you're looking to do. I think Electro into, like, going with like a Bucky into Electro into Lady Deathstrike is a good way to get some power on the board. You're left with 8 power on the board and an extra energy for the rest of the game. Seems pretty good. Also, that would be good if you, especially good if you can get like X23 in that lane, and now you have 2 extra energy the next turn and then 1 extra into the rest of the game. These seem like powerful things to do. It's very combo wombo and very easy to disrupt, right? Like, opponent throws a rock there, or squirrels pop up and ruin your life, or an armor or a Cosmo, and all of a sudden you're in a bad spot. But hey, it's a doable thing. And lastly, we have Mr. Negative. I think Mr. Negative is likely the best home for some destroy package, and likely the best home for Forge and Shuri. So that is going to be the home we have. The Mr. Negative list, I have this big mental block problem with that we're going to talk about. I'm going to ask for your help. There are other decks to build with this card that are not being talked about today, right? If you would like to build any of these with me, with my community, go to the Marvel Snap Zone Discord. It is linked in the description to this very video. We hang out in there. It's a bunch of players who, hey everybody, who largely regularly hit Infinite, based largely on hanging out there, having high-level conversations, getting really great decks, learning how to play the game better as a community. You come there and ask us to build a deck. We're going to work with you to build a deck. So please feel free to join us there. And if you're going to do that, you should really subscribe, right? We'd really appreciate that as well again. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at the first deck. This is our Cerebro Deathstrike. So the play line here is something like Bast. You almost never want to play Blade until the last turn, right? So Bast into whatever 2-drop you can. Invisible Woman makes some sense here, right? Into into Magic, Cerebro, and Mystique. Then you Deathstrike to blow up all of their stuff. You are not blowing up your stuff as long as you're not silly enough to do that into the Cerebro Mystique lane, because your stuff will all have the exact same power outside of Cerebro, Mystique, and Iron Man. At that point, you've blown up a bunch of their stuff. You have still like a bunch of power in that location. The next turn, you're going to drop Valkyrie and Blade. Excuse me. You're going to take all their stuff down to 3 power, but your stuff will be 5 or 7 power when Valkyrie lowers all their stuff, or you drop Iron Man and basically double all your stuff. There are plenty of card substitutions for this deck for cards you don't have. The only high series card on this is Jeff. So Killmonger probably belongs here. If you don't have Jeff, run Killmonger. There's also, I don't know, 17 2/3s in the game. Pick one that doesn't raise its power in any way, shape, or form, and you're fine running that. The beauty of Sentinel here is that it keeps replacing itself, so it gives you multiple things that will get pumped if you play it multiple times. Other thing to note, Iron Man might be 1/5 cost too many for this version of the deck, but I really hate running Mystique without Iron Man because I feel like Cerebro is now the only target. You don't really want to copy Invisible Woman. That sucks a little bit. So you can cut Iron Man for that Killmonger spot if you want. It's fine. Is this likely to be the best Cerebro deck? Is what I end up asking myself. Don't think so. I think Cerebro 2 is too good. And the reason I think Cerebro 2 is too good is two specific cards. One is Magic. Magic actually benefits the deck in a Cerebro 2. 3 cards, excuse me. Magic actually benefits the deck in Cerebro 2 because she is 2 power. 2, Luke Cage is a 2 power card, so you fit Luke Cage into a Cerebro 2. And the third is Blue Marvel, gives all those cards the extra power bump anyway, and also fits in a Cerebro 2 because he makes everyone's base power 3 because he's giving everything +1. He's a 3. Everything gets the Cerebro bump. That's also the second card for Mystique to copy in that version of the list. That's better than this, I think, right? Especially because locations can still ruin Cerebro. You get the -1 location, and with this version of the deck, you're just kind of dead. With the Luke Cage version, unless they can stop your Luke Cage, you still win. That's important. This only has Magic to hopefully get rid of that location, and then you need to see Magic at the right time. It's tough. I think this is fun, and I think if you're a Cerebro stan, this is going to be one of the best ways to do it, because making Lady Deathstrike a 5 or 7 power card before you play her in this is going to win you a lot of games. So, it's doable. It's probably decent. Great. Almost certainly not. Okay. This is where I think the meta might live for this card, if it's ever going to be a meta card. And Forge has to be Magic in this deck. I don't want it to be, but it really, really, really has to be. Yes, it could be Bast, right? It's Bast or Forge. But okay. So the idea of this deck, let's forget negative for a second. It's Zabu or Psylocke into Wong, into Shuri, into Deathstrike. At that point, your Deathstrike is like 9 power or whatever. Doubled and doubled. She's 12 power, something silly. She's enough to wreck the opponent's board. Great. At that point, you've killed a bunch of cards, right? So null is huge. You've now won your negative game without needing negative. If you add Magic, you can do that a turn later. It also lets you Zola off either that Deathstrike or that null, either of which seem absolutely backbreaking. That's why you have to have Magic in this deck. The other playline is obviously get out Mr. Negative, and then if you just draw Deathstrike natively, she's a 3/5. A 5 power card is awesome at blowing things up, right? Like a 3, you're still killing your opponent's Sarahs and such. Awesome. And if you can go Forge into Deathstrike, for example, now it's a 7 power card. And that now you're killing anything 6 and under, and that's like hitting your White Queens or your Iron Lads and so on. Like there's a lot of really cool things to do with this build. Again, Magic has to be Best or Forge. Don't know which. You do need Psylocke and Zabu, both, I think, for this version. Not only to get negative out early, but to get your Shuri Wong nonsense going. It can also give you the opportunity, if you have figured out some early kill, or like, I don't know, whatever location has killed a lot of stuff, to get a null out on 5 and a Zola out on 6 with Psylocke, right? Like a Psylocke on 4 will allow that. There's ways to do this that work out. I think that if Deathstrike ends up meta, it's a deck like this. However, even looking at it, I don't think this is probably as good as the Silver Surfer negative decks that were running around a few weeks ago that Legion chased out of the meta. I think that this is probably as good as negative gets, or close to as good as negative gets, without being great. So, I don't know, it's worth considering if you really, really love negative. This is, if I buy Deathstrike, this is the deck I'm making to play with her. All right. Am I buying Deathstrike? I don't think she looks good. I think she looks bad. I have every card in the game. I'm a content creator, obviously. I am making content right now, right? Do we want to have this card so we can test it? Yes. Do I think testing it's going to prove much? No. I'm very unlikely to buy her on the very first day. I'll tell you that. I'm probably waiting till Thursday or Friday to get as much information as possible. I just don't think she's good. Like, I don't know how else to put that. I just don't think she's good. Reasons to buy her. You have way too many tokens. And I'm talking 30,000 plus. If I were in the 20s, I wouldn't buy her. I'm at 33, which is why I'm considering it, and I'm probably buying, well, I'm definitely buying the Death Becomes Her bundle for a viewer, and I'm buying the Death Becomes Her bundle for myself. So, like, that's like another 4,000 tokens, so, like, I should probably just grab her at that point. But there are 2 more Series 5 cards coming this month, and Alioth, who's a 6/5, who destroys all cards played in the location that turn, even unrevealed ones, are must buy to me. Every other card is must buy to me. I'd like to open them all with spotlight caches, but that's hard to guarantee because you would need 4 spotlight caches each for 3 cards. That's 12, 16 spotlight caches to guarantee all of these Series 5 cards. That's a big ask. I have 8 saved, so it's possible I open for this. I really don't want those variants though. So, like, while it's possible I open for this, there's no guarantee I do. You have to have a lot of spotlight caches. Like, you have to have at least 8 to even consider it, and I'd probably be closer to 12 if I were going to grab it. Do you absolutely love Mr. Negative, Destroy, or Cerebro 3? If those are like your bread and butter, if those are the things that make you happy, then of course you should buy her. If you're a giant Lady Deathstrike the character fan, then of course you should buy her. The game is about having fun at the end of the day, as much as we'd all like to improve at Infinite, do our best. If you love this thing, it's going to bring you joy in a video game, then have joy in your game, right? Fine. But if you care at all about progression and staying on top of the meta and your resources are limited at all, this is not a card to buy or open caches for. Do the other cards in the Spotlight cache change that? That's the next thing we need to look at. I don't want Deathstrike. Maybe I want MODOK or Stature so bad that I open for open Spotlight caches, and if I get it, great. The first Spotlight cache card is MODOK. MODOK is Series 4, a former Season Pass card, which means it costs 3,000 tokens. It is an on-reveal, discard your hand. This is a card that people keep trying to make a thing in other decks, but is really only a thing in Classic Discard. If you've been dying to play Classic Discard and you picked up Decken, then MODOK is absolutely worth having. Will MODOK be Series 3? Lord knows. No one knows what's happening with series drops. It is my single greatest frustration in the game that they are not telling us anything about series drops so we can plan in advance. Planning is important when you've got a limited economy, not putting hundreds and thousands of dollars into this game. MODOK is good. If you really, really, really want to play discard, you probably should have just bought him for 3,000 tokens. Is that reasonable? Like, if you really wanted MODOK, discard only works if you're playing MODOK. Only works if you have MODOK in your deck at a top level at the very least. So you should already have him. The reason MODOK is here, I think, is not because they think 1,000 people want MODOK. They think a few extra people want MODOK, and MODOK synergizes with Daken, the Season Pass card. That's why he's here. If you are like, oh man, I really wish I could play all those discard decks that everyone published the second Daken came out, then MODOK is here. And you want Deathstrike. Deathstrike is, from previous slide, brings you joy for one of those reasons. Go get MODOK too. I'd really, really, really suggest you just spend 3,000 tokens if you're dying for MODOK, though. And it's very unlikely that you're dying for both MODOK and Stature. This is the highest winning Daken deck I could find. It's from Specimen, phenomenal YouTuber and deck builder. This is his version of discard. Its basic gist is get out Morbius and ideally Nebula You can Colleen away your Swarm, or you can Gambit away your Swarm. You can play Dakin. Yes, if you play Dakin, you can also play Absorbing Man to make yourself a nice big Dakin, which means that when you MODOK, that is a fundamentally one lane unless your opponent has Shang-Chi. You can also Dakin in one lane, and then drop Dracula, and then drop MODOK. End of the game, you've got a Dracula to discard Apocalypse, which gives you both Morbius and extra power, and Dracula gets the when it returns to hand power, and you can just play America Chavez. The end. You could also conceivably go Nebula, Morbius, Dakin, Absorbing Man, Dracula here, and just do the MODOK thing on 6, and you're just chucking that America Chavez. You still have all the discards, and you get the extra power for Apocalypse that way just fine. And you get the double Dakin that way. It's still a ton of power on the board. Your Apocalypse will be 16 power, so you've got a 16 power Dracula, and then you've got a 16 power Dakin trying to win the game, and 8 power MODOK. It's not bad, and Morbius is likely 8 to 10 power at that point too. A lot of power. It's a good way to win games. Be wary here that you don't always want Colleen to hit Nebula. Nebula can be a little awkward. In my versions of this, I don't really play a 1-drop. I just go up and drop a Wolverine as an extra thing that can go on the board. That's my major change to this deck. I think everything else is more or less the same. It's a good list. It wins a lot. It's got like a 60% win rate. It's got a really good cube rate. If you like linear decks, because this is an extremely linear deck, play it. The reason I like this deck right now, like the only real reason is I feel like Zabu is in every deck. And one of my favorite things is to drop a Nebula and win priority, and then they don't play anything on 1. They play Zabu on 2. I have priority because of Nebula, and then I can drop a Gambit on 3. And then my Gambit on 3, they only has one thing to target. I don't really care what it discards at that point. Killing their Zabu is so high value, and that'll usually win me. I don't know. It's fine. It's a good deck. It's a very good deck. Like, you can hit infinite with this deck. If you want to play this deck, you need MODOK. There is no replacement. The end. All right. Spotlight card Stature. Stature is one of my favorite cards to Snap. Straight up. Series 4, 3,000 tokens. I did not change the name of it. It is not when it's destroyed at a copy to its location. It's if an opponent has discarded a card this game, Stature costs 1. Cool. This slideshow will be in the description. I'll have it fixed for that. Don't stress it. If an opponent has discarded a card this game, Stature costs 1. There are 2 ways in the game to currently do that. They are Black Bolt, 5/7, discard the lowest cost card from your opponent's hand. That'll make Stature cost 1. These 2 cards combo really well. And Moon Knight, who's a 3/3, discard a card from your hand at random and an opponent's hand at random. I swear Moon Knight always ends up hitting my Stature when I try that, so I only ever run with Black Bolt. The end of the month, the reason Stature is here, the end of the month is Silver Samurai, who is a 4/5. Silver Samurai reads, discard the lowest power card from both your hand and an opponent's hand. With Zabu, especially, that is a really, really great thing to do. You can get rid of an opponent's Iron Man, an opponent's like all sorts of powerful cards, right? An opponent's Morbius, so on and so forth, by using that card, and you can build your deck so that you're discarding something low value, for example, a Muramasa Shard. The real danger here, however, is that rocks are going to be dangerous. We'll talk more about that when we get closer to Silver Samurai, but Silver Samurai is a second Stature enabler. Stature's a great card. She goes in one of the best decks in the game, but that deck is expensive. If Stature is the only piece you're missing, still probably buy Legion. Legion is just as good in the deck. You can play Sarah in the Black Bolt spot, right, and be totally fine. However, at the Snap Battle Arena tournament this past weekend, Harbor lost 1 game, went 8 or 9-1, was King of Swiss with this Stature Black Bolt deck. Stature and Black Bolt are also in a lot of Owl God's recent move brews as like a way to just drop power at the end of the game. This deck is really sweet. This was the meta deck for a while. If you've been playing Snap for long enough to honestly have most of these cards, there was a version of this deck that ran an extra 1-drop. Nebula was the popular one. I preferred Ghost. It ran an extra 1-drop, it ran Polaris, and it ran Miles, and then that little move package made your Miles cheap. Jeff and Polaris made your Miles cheap. This instead says I've got Spider Ham to blow up my opponent's big plays. Spider Ham is why I don't love that discard deck from earlier. Spider Ham is just present enough and basically auto beats discard. It's a hard counter. Spider Ham is getting a rework. Glenn has confirmed to some extent. To what extent, we don't know. We do know it requires a patch, so it's not just a numbers change. The two likely answers are either it doesn't show you what it hits, or it hits a random card. We'll see what that does to the meta. Let's not get, for now though, Spider Ham is very bad for discard. In this deck, what you basically want to do, ideally with Zabu out, is you want to play Black Bolt on turn 5. And then on turn 6, you can play Stature with another 4-drop, right? You can drop Stature and Captain Marvel, Stature and Shang-Chi, Stature and Enchantress, Stature and Darkhawk. And then you still have the energy to play your Jeff or get an extra couple stats with Spider Ham. Deck works great. The Miles play was really nice because even without Zabu, you can go Shang if you moved your Jeff properly. You can go Shang, Stature, and Miles for like a point slam on the last turn. But hey, look, this deck just rushed a super competitive tournament. So it's 100% worth keeping in mind how good this is, how good Stature is. This deck works fine without Stature. There are 18 versions of this deck that cut Black Bolt and Stature for various things. Some run Sarah, some run Legion, some stop and just run only 4-cost cards. You will be fine. You can run Arrow, you can run Vision, you can throw Shuri in one of those cards in. There's a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. Most versions run Iron Lad. This isn't running Iron Lad, thankfully, so I don't have to answer what card to replace Iron Lad with 18 times in the comments. But that is how this works. You don't have Spider Ham. Replace Spider Ham with any good 2. What good 2 could you replace Spider Ham with for this deck? Let's say Lizard. Lizard's perfectly fine. Let's say Medusa. Same exact thing is true of Jeff. Replace with your appropriately chosen 2. Or Polaris is still fine. Spider-Man is still fine. These are good cards. You don't have Zebu and Darkhawk. Please don't play a Zebu and Darkhawk deck. You need both of those cards. So these kinds of cards are why I don't think Stature and MODOK are worth buying, because Zebu and Darkhawk are 2 of the most powerful cards in the game, and we have no indication that they're being changed. And since they're so powerful, for the same cost as Stature and MODOK, I'd rather have Zabu and Darkhawk, like 10 times out of 10. I'd rather have Legion. Same cost. Spider Ham. If we didn't know a change was coming, I'd rather have Spider Ham. So that's why I don't especially like this, although Stature is really cool. And I am beyond excited to brew with Stature and Silver Samurai. It's a card I got when it first dropped to Series 4 and have been playing since. So, like, I'm not saying that this is a bad card. I'm saying that if you have all those other cards and you're not crazy about anything coming in September and you have enough tokens, then these are worth buying with tokens. I don't think I would ever open Spotlight caches for them. I just, like, unless you're dying for Deathstrike, I just don't think that's a good idea. All right, that is this morning's show. I will be back later today with Thanos Galactus build. I've got 2 that both hit infinite with like 60% win rates and like silly 0.9-ish cube rates. So we're going to talk about those later today. Make sure you're subbed and check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to sub, like, comment, hit those buttons. Help us out. We appreciate you.